Okay, well, hi, I'm Eric, and we're here in Peggy's backyard, and we're going to just do some basic pruning techniques. First, I'm going to talk about why we're doing the cuts, the tools we're going to use to make the cuts, and then each of the trees we're going to be working on. Something to remember is that trees don't need to be pruned. We as humans need to prune these trees to make them do what we want them to do. Knowing that in the back of your head, also understand that every cut we make, every prune we make is a wound to the tree. So we want to be deliberate about each and every cut. Tools you need, some nice bypass hand pruners. And when I mean by bypass, it means that that blade bypasses the anvil as opposed to coming flat down on it. So a nice pair of hand pruners. Also, bypass loppers, same sort of thing. The blade will bypass the anvil there. And then a small folding, well, it doesn't have to be folding, but a small pruning saw. My rule of thumb, if it's your finger size or smaller, use the hand pruners. 2 fingers or smaller, use your loppers. Anything bigger, use your saw. We're working on 2 trees here. We have an apple tree. Apples are very similar to pears, and they have the same sort of growing habit. They tend to grow upright. You can see all the branches in there, instead of going outward, all want to kind of go straight up. Pears and apples have a growing habit called a central leader, meaning that there's one stem that's going up and everything tends to branch off of that. We're in Peggy's backyard. She does not want a 40-foot tree, so she's kept this low and forced some side branching, but the other ones are coming up like that. So we're going to be making some cuts. We're going to be thinning them out. But first, how to make a good cut. When you make a cut, you're actually telling the tree which way to grow and how to grow. So we have a branch coming out here like this. Let's say we wanted the branch to go in this direction. We would find a bud or a growth that's already heading in that direction and then make a cut. Take everything off above it or around it and then force that to go the way we want it to go. These are always kind of daunting. You come to a tree and it's like, oh my gosh, what do I cut? What do I cut? What do I cut? Use some scientific techniques that I'm going to tell you about and then go to your creative side. So start with science and then go to art is what I say. So we have branches that are competing with each other. We have this branch coming up right next to this branch, right in front of this branch. They're all kind of occupying the same spot. Therefore, they're all competing with each other. It would be best if we could thin out some of these branches and let one of them mature to its natural form and its potential. I think about what kind of tree it is, an apple tree, so they're going to want to go up. What I do is I look at it and figure out what branches I want to keep. What are my good branches? And then I look around it. Actually, let me back up. First, I worry about the broken branches. If there's a broken branch somewhere in here that's badly damaged, I'll take that out. Dead branches, they're not going to do us any good, take them out. And then look for the crossed and crowded branches. And that's what I was just talking about right now. All 3 of these are kind of crowded. You can see this one is crossing in front of this one and that one. So that's a potential problem down there. So again, I talked about how these are all in the way of each other. I want to open this up to allow one of these branches, and I think this big one in the back, it has a nice form, it's coming off the trunk nicely, it's outside of the core of it, so it'll have room to grow in and around. This is going to be the branch I'm going to keep. So these 2 branches that are directly competing with it, I'm just going to take off, everything off. When you take off a branch, at the base where it attaches to the larger branch or limb, there's usually this kind of crinkling or bunching of bark. That's called the branch bark collar. In that area are special cells that help seal up a wound. Unlike us, we heal. If we get a cut, we scab and that scab flush off and living tissue's there. Trees are different. When you wound them, they don't heal, they seal it. There's dead piece of tissue in there that gets covered by living tissue. So there's always going to be a dead piece of tissue in there. So you want to minimize the size of that tissue. And you want to make sure that these little cells here stay alive so they have a chance to cover up that wound. What will happen is when I make a cut, there will be something called response growth. And all around here there are some dormant buds just sitting in this tissue that are going to sprout out. Because up here, these are sending enzymes down to suppress any new growth. But when I cut that, enzyme stops coming down, and then we'll have little buds coming out here. When that happens, just take your thumb and rub them off. You don't have to cut it. But I'm being very careful not to cut into that bunched tissue so it has a chance to seal over that wound. When possible, try to make a round cut as best you can. That just makes a smaller wound. Think about it if you had to amputate your arm. Would you rather have the doctor come and cut like that or make an angle cut? Yeah, I think we all want that. And then this second branch too, it's going up into this guy's business, so I'm going to take it off. And this is a little different. It has some strange growth and it looks like response growth to previous prunes. But if I look down here, I can see that bunching of the bark, and that's where I'm going to take it off at. Again, trying to make as small a wound as possible. Now this is a particularly tricky one to get into, and it's always better to make a bad cut in the right place than to think, hey, it's easier to get to this one, I'm just going to take this one off because I can get to it better. So a bad cut in the right place is better than a good cut in the wrong place. I cut into that tissue a little bit. All right, and we can see how just taking those two branches opened up quite a bit of that. So now these branches are all going to have a little bit more room to grow and fill in, and light can get in still, and air can circulate, and we have room for our fruit to grow.
Is the light getting into the rest of the tree pretty important for stone fruits?
Very important for stone fruits and apples and pears. Citrus, it doesn't matter so much, but our deciduous fruiting trees here, it really does. Now again, I mentioned that this branch is crossing into this stuff, so this is a potential issue right here. And I think just by taking this one branch off, I can eliminate the cross that's here and give that one a little bit more room to spread out, and the under branches a little bit more room too. So I'm going to take this one more branch off and one more major branch after that. When using your bypass, loppers and or pruners, you always want your blade against the branch you're cutting. Because if you look at it, there's that little ridge right there. If you put the blade on the outside, you're going to have a little stub. The closer you have your blade to the trunk, the smaller your stub. So the sharp one is the blade, and the flat, hard one is the anvil. So you want your blade against the one you're cutting. So again, we're taking that off. So because it's on the top side of that, I want my blade down, so I take that off again, paying attention to that branch bark collar. Okay, so that guy has pretty good form. These two branches are really competing with each other, so I'm going to take off that interior one. And we still have a little crowding issue over there. I don't know if you can tell how this branch and this branch are sort of in each other's business. So I think I'm going to take this branch off, not all the way back to here, but right here, because this is going in a good spot and it has room. And I think that's all the major pruning we're going to do to this now. We have good scaffolding. These right here might be an issue one day because these are coming across and that's going that way. So what we might want to do one day is maybe take that off or take that off and let the other go. Maybe when it gets more mature and the other branches start to fill and they start to compete a little bit more, we can take one of those off completely and let the other flourish. But right now it's small enough, there's still enough room. Now, like I said, Peggy wants to keep this tree fairly short so she can reach it. So anything above my fingertips is going to come off. So when you're lowering a tree, you want to use something called the crotch drop method. It means you drop down to a viable crotch and take off the branch. So these are crotches. You want to look for your branch coming off of that, that's about a third to half the size of the original. You don't want to get too small. You kind of lose a little aesthetics when you do, and it's a little bit harder for this one to get established. It's nice to already have a nice established one. In fact, she's already made some cuts here previously, it looks like, and I think this is already a pretty good cut right there. This one's coming out and it's going up. I'm just going to take this one off altogether, and just by taking this one branch off, I've kept the height where she already wants it. And again, my blade up against the trunk, nice and clean, off it comes. So one cut, we've lowered the tree by a foot in that area. I'm going to do that with this one too. Got to get into the tree to get those back ones. So we have a lot of growth down here. And let's see. Again, she's already made some of these cuts. And she's done a really good job, actually. I don't know if you can see up here. I'm going to point out your one mistake. Okay. One in all these cuts. Okay. See how that's dead right there? I don't know if you guys in the back can see, but it's discolored. When you make your cuts, you want to come down right above the branch you want to keep. Because what's going to happen is, until there's a place for that energy to go, everything above it's going to die. So all the nutrients and energy and life are coming up the tree through here, and there's no growth area up here, no latent buds or area for it to go. So it went down this stream and is sending all the energy up there, and it's just let that die and sloughing it off. Doesn't really hurt the tree, it just doesn't look great. Right. And you just don't want big dead sticks on your tree. So you just want to cut that just above the crotch you want to go to. Well, just for demonstration purposes, I'm not going to take too much off your tree, so don't worry. But I'm going to show the lowering cut. I mentioned before you're looking for that branch you kind of want to be at. This is a good example of where there's a branch coming out right here. Good energy, good strength to it. We could lower, if the tree was taller and we needed to take it off, we could take that off right there. And now this is going to start budding out more, and these will grow up, and your tree now is at a manageable height. Taking this one because it's growing back into the wall, and I'm going to make a cut on this one. There's no real new growth on it, just a bunch of buds that are getting ready to pop open. So in order to encourage some branching out here, so we can get some flowers and fruit maybe next year, I'm going to top this, and I'm going to come down to a bud that's going in the direction I want the new growth to go into. So I don't want it going over to the neighbor's yard, so I'm going to have it come up and in. So I found a bud that's going in the way I want it to go. I make a cut at approximately a 45-degree angle, with the bottom of my cut just above the bud and the top of my cut just above it. And what that does, let me show you guys up close. So let's say I wanted to keep this bud right here. I make approximately a 45-degree angle cut with the bottom of my blade right at the base of that bud and the top of my blade coming over the top of it.
So why would you cut it this way versus wanting to cut it that way?
Less dead wood's going to be hanging on, so you can see how, remember I talked about the energy coming up and it's going to grow out here, so this is going to die. This little end's going to die, so I want as small of end as possible. It doesn't hurt it when this is small to cut it straight across, but again, you're just going to have more dead wood to deal with later. Okay, I think we're done with this.